PDPs done right, stop ticking boxes, start changing futures. If there's one tool that should drive retention, boost confidence, and unlock future leaders in your business, it's the personal development plan. And yet, in far too many workplaces, PDPs are misunderstood, misused, or completely forgotten. They're treated as paperwork, administrator, a polite HR ritual to be completed, submitted, and ignored. But what if I told you the problem isn't the people? It's how we're using the tool. In this edition, we're cutting through the fluff to show you how to transform PDPs from tick-box tasks into real engines of growth for your team, your culture, and your bottom line. Still using PDPs as admin? Let's fix that. Let's get this out of the way early. Most personal development plans, PDPs, fail. Not because the people are unmotivated, not because the goals are too ambitious, and definitely not because the form wasn't designed well enough. They fail because we've turned something deeply human, the desire to grow, into an annual admin exercise. You know the routine, a templated form, some vaguely worded goals about communication or confidence, a tick in the LMS, and then it disappears until someone asks about it in a year's time. We've taken the personal out of personal development. And yet, if we want to engage and retain our people, particularly in hospitality, where growth paths can feel opaque and development often plays second fiddle to operations, we need to rethink PDPs entirely. Because here's the real truth. When done well, PDPs don't just support growth. They drive retention, confidence, leadership readiness, and performance. In fact, 94% of employees say they'd stay longer at a company that invests in their development, LinkedIn Learning Workplace Learning Report 2019, and we're still letting that opportunity slip. What a PDP is and isn't, let's start with some clarity. A personal development plan isn't a spreadsheet, a system entry, or a line in an appraisal form. It's a mutual commitment between employee and manager to explore potential, set direction, and take meaningful steps toward growth. Done well, it's co-created, actionable, aligned to the individual and the business, regularly reviewed, genuinely motivational. Poorly done, it becomes a vague wish list of training courses and aspirations with no real accountability, support, or follow-up. PDP or PIP know the difference. This part matters because it's confused too often. A personal development plan, PDP, is about growth, helping someone move forward, stretch their strengths, and achieve long-term goals. It's future-facing, positive, and often self-initiated. It's what you give to people you believe in and want to invest in. A performance improvement plan, PIP, is about correction, managing someone who isn't meeting expectations. It's targeted, time-bound, and typically more formal. It can be the final step before further action is taken. Too often, managers avoid difficult conversations and try to hide a PIP inside a PDP, softening language, hinting at consequences, but never being clear. The result? The employee feels misled, the manager loses credibility, and neither document serves its purpose. Use a PDP to support ambition. Use a PIP to support accountability. Use both correctly, and everyone wins. Build from conversation, not a form. Before you even open a document, could you start with a conversation? And not just the, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Cliché. Ask better questions. The kind that uncovers drive, fear, and untapped potential. What energizes you in your role right now? Where do you feel least confident? If you could develop one skill that would make your job easier, what would it be? What would you like to be doing more of in 6 months? This is the foundation of a meaningful PDP, one rooted in reflection and ambition, not compliance. And don't assume development must always mean promotion. For some, it's about mastery. For others, it's about confidence, clarity, or variety. All are valid. Set fewer goals, but make them count. If your PDP has more than 3 goals, it may be too many. Focus. Prioritize. Help your team member identify 1 or 2 goals that would genuinely shift the dial, for them and for the business. Make sure every goal is SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, and frame them in terms of real-world action, not abstract ambition. Make development practical, not theoretical. Hospitality teams are busy. Shifts are unpredictable. No one's logging on to online modules at midnight after closing the bar. So, bring development into the everyday. Shadow someone from another team for an hour. Run the morning briefing once a week. Present a mini project to the GM. Take over the stock count for 1 cycle. Write a 1-pager on what you've learned this month. Learning happens best when it's lived, not when it's scheduled. What to do when PDPs stall. Even great plans lose momentum. Life gets in the way. People get stuck. Here's what to do when it happens. Talk early. Don't wait for a review meeting. Check in monthly. Unpack the blockers. Time, confidence, support. Scope the real issue. Be flexible. Adjust goals, timelines, or formats if needed. Reinforce the value. Acknowledge effort, even if results take time. Remember, development is a journey, not a pass-fail score. Real-world PDPs that actually work. Alex, Guest Services Agent. Goal, build leadership confidence. Action, lead the team briefing twice a month and receive peer feedback. Support, Shadow Duty Manager once per week. 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗹𝗱𝗶, Housekeeping Team Leader. Goal, improve reporting and digital admin skills. Action, complete weekly room discrepancy logs in PMS and have the manager review them. Support, 1-to-1 coaching on Excel basics. 𝗣𝗲𝗱𝗀𝗻 sous chef goal, understand the commercial drivers of the kitchen. Action, create a monthly food cost report and present to the GM. Support, monthly mentoring with the executive chef. 𝗕𝗂𝗏 night auditor. Goal, explore internal career paths. Action, conduct 2 informational interviews with other departments. Support, time allocated to attend 1 interdepartmental meeting. Try this week. Pick 1 team member. Ask them, what's one thing you'd love to get better at? Something that would help you feel more confident, more capable, or more future-ready. Then, could you agree on 1 small action together? Please write it down. Schedule a follow-up. That's your PDP in motion. Conclusion: don't file it, fuel it. The future of your team doesn't live in a form. It lives in the conversations you have, the questions you ask, and the opportunities you create. Personal development plans, when done right, aren't about ticking boxes. They're about unlocking possibilities. For too long, we've let development become passive, something people are sent on rather than supported through. But we can change that. We must change that, especially in an industry built on people, growth, and adaptability.
Keeping staff training records up to date, a game changer for hoteliers. Running a hotel is a bit like orchestrating a symphony. Every team member, from front desk staff to housekeeping, plays a crucial role in delivering a seamless guest experience. But here's a truth that often gets overlooked. The key to harmony lies in keeping staff training records up to date. Far from being a tedious administrative task, maintaining accurate training records is a game changer. It's about empowering your team to perform their best, meeting compliance requirements, and building a culture of continuous learning. Why training records matter. Imagine this scenario. A guest with severe allergies asks about menu options, and your server confidently provides a solution thanks to updated allergen training. Or perhaps a surprise safety audit takes place, and your training records demonstrate that every employee is certified and ready for emergencies. These aren't just examples of good management. They're the result of prioritizing training and record keeping. Updated training records reflect your commitment to service excellence and employee development. More than that, They create a foundation for a culture where staff are engaged, confident, and capable. But here's the catch. Training isn't a one-and-done exercise. An industry as dynamic as hospitality needs to evolve constantly, just like your team. Rethinking training for hotels. Let's face it, traditional approaches to training don't cut it anymore. One-size-fits-all programs and tick-the-box records belong in the past. If you want a team that truly thrives, you need to rethink your strategy. 1. Focus on purpose, not just compliance. While compliance is non-negotiable, training should go further. Think about what truly helps your staff excel. Does your housekeeping team understand the latest eco-friendly cleaning techniques? Can your front desk staff manage demanding guests with ease? Purposeful training addresses real-world challenges and equips your team to shine. 2. Make continuous improvement. The norm, training isn't a one-time event. It's a journey. Embed it into the day-to-day operations of your hotel. Regular refreshers, skills workshops, and professional development opportunities keep your team sharp and motivated. 3. Personalized learning. Every employee brings unique skills and goals to the table, so why treat their training the same? Tailor your approach to individual roles and aspirations. A concierge might need advanced customer service training, while a chef may benefit from workshops on dietary trends. Personalization makes training relevant and meaningful. Practical tips for maintaining training records. While rethinking your approach to training is essential, maintaining up-to-date records is where it all comes together. Here's how to stay on top of it without being overwhelmed. Build a system that works. Start with a system that suits your needs. Whether it's a cloud-based learning management system, LMS, or a simple spreadsheet, the goal is to centralize and simplify. Capture key details like training dates, topics covered, certifications earned, and feedback. Use technology. Gone are the days of dusty file cabinets. Embrace apps and software to track training progress, automate reminders, and flag upcoming certifications. This saves time and helps you quickly identify gaps or overdue sessions. Regularly review and refresh training records are only helpful if they're current. Schedule regular reviews to audit your records, identify gaps, and update expired certifications. This isn't just about compliance, it's about ensuring your team stays ready for anything. Foster a learning culture. Your team should see training as an opportunity, not a chore. Celebrate milestones, share success stories, and involve staff in shaping future training. When learning becomes part of your culture, record keeping becomes second nature. The big picture, a culture of excellence. Keeping staff training records current is more than an operational necessity. It's a step towards building a culture of excellence. When meaningful training is embedded in your hotel's ethos, it empowers your team to go above and beyond. The benefits? Guests who leave glowing reviews, a team that takes pride in their work, and a hotel that stands out in a competitive market. It's not just about records, it's about creating a workplace where everyone thrives. Signs you're on the right track. How do you know your efforts are paying off? Here are some indicators. Happier guests. Exceptional service leads to positive reviews and repeat bookings. Compliance confidence. Inspections and audits become stress-free when your records are in order. Engaged employees. A team that feels supported and valued is likelier to stay loyal and motivated. Final thoughts. Maintaining up-to-date training records might not sound glamorous, but it's vital to running a successful hotel. By focusing on purposeful training, leveraging technology, and fostering a learning culture, you're setting your team and your business up for long-term success. Remember, the effort you invest in your staff today will pay dividends in guest satisfaction, operational excellence, and team morale. So, what are you waiting for? It's time to take training records from a chore to a competitive advantage. 𝗟𝗲 is a senior HR leader with over 25 years of global experience spanning hospitality, HR transformation, and leadership development. Passionate about creating thriving workplaces, 𝗟𝗲 shares practical insights to help organizations tackle real-world challenges. If you want to work with me, contact me at carl@winkhr.uk or search winkhr.uk for more information. Unlocking the potential of remote workforces. Strategies for success. In today's rapidly evolving business landscape, globalization has become more than just a buzzword. It's a strategic imperative for companies aiming to stay competitive in their respective industries. Yet, with the myriad challenges that come with managing a dispersed workforce, many leaders find themselves grappling with issues of productivity, communication, and trust. However, by embracing the principles of effective leadership and leveraging the benefits of remote work, businesses can not only thrive, but also foster a culture of innovation and collaboration across geographical boundaries. Passion fuels success. At the heart of every successful remote team lies a leader who is not only passionate about their work, but also embodies a sense of enthusiasm that inspires others. When leading a team that spans different cultures and time zones, maintaining a positive attitude can be a powerful tool for overcoming obstacles and building camaraderie among team members. Embrace the diversity of thought and perspective that comes with a global workforce, and recognize that effective leadership is about empowering individuals to excel in their roles, regardless of their location. Building trust. Across borders. Trust is the cornerstone of any successful relationship, and it becomes even more critical when managing a remote team. Instead of micromanaging every aspect of your employees' work, focus on creating a culture of accountability and transparency. Encourage open communication, provide constructive feedback, and foster a sense of belonging among team members. By demonstrating trust in your employees and their abilities, you can cultivate a collaborative environment where everyone feels valued and empowered to contribute their best. Effective communication is key. In a virtual work environment, clear and consistent communication is essential for keeping everyone aligned and engaged. Leverage technology tools such as video conferencing, instant messaging, and project management platforms to facilitate seamless communication across borders. Be mindful of cultural differences and language barriers, and strive to create an inclusive environment where everyone feels heard and understood. Remember, effective communication is not just about conveying information. It's about building connections and fostering relationships that transcend physical boundaries. Setting goals and establishing guidelines. Successful leaders understand the importance of setting clear goals and establishing guidelines for their teams. Avoid the trap of imposing unrealistic deadlines or creating a sense of urgency that leads to burnout. Instead, focus on setting achievable objectives and holding individuals accountable for their contributions. Utilize project management software, conduct regular progress meetings, and provide transparent incentives to keep everyone motivated and aligned with the company's objectives. By defining clear goals and expectations, you can empower your team to work collaboratively towards a common vision. Hiring the right talent. When building a remote team, hiring the right talent is paramount to success. Look for individuals who not only possess the necessary skills and qualifications, but also demonstrate strong communication skills and a collaborative mindset. Emphasize the importance of professionalism and courtesy in written communication, as the majority of interactions within a remote team will occur via email, chat, or project management software. Conduct thorough evaluations of candidates' writing abilities and ensure they align with your company's values and culture. Remember, the individuals you hire will not only represent your brand, but also shape the culture of your remote team. Embracing the journey. Finally, it's essential to recognize that building and managing a successful remote team is a journey, not a destination. Be patient, remain committed to your goals, and celebrate the progress you've made along the way. Embrace the opportunities that globalization presents and view the challenges as opportunities for growth and innovation. By fostering a culture of collaboration, trust, and communication, you can unlock the full potential of your remote workforce and position your company for long-term success in an increasingly interconnected world. Bonus season, a leadership moment that deserves more attention. March is a quietly significant month in many organisations. Across the UK and much of Europe, leadership teams are closing the books on the previous financial year, while HR and finance teams complete the final stages of bonus calculations. Performance ratings are calibrated, bonus pools are reviewed, and senior leaders weigh the balance between recognising contribution and maintaining commercial discipline. For many executives, the process feels largely financial. The numbers must add up. Company performance needs to be reflected. Budgets have to be respected. Yet the moments that follow these calculations are rarely financial for employees. Soon, managers across the business begin sitting down with their teams to discuss outcomes. In hotel companies, these conversations may take place in quiet offices behind the reception desk, in meeting rooms next to busy kitchens, or during brief pauses between operational briefings. Wherever they occur, they rarely feel like technical compensation discussions to the people on the receiving end. For the employee sitting across the table, the conversation carries a different meaning. It becomes a signal about how the organisation sees their contribution and whether their effort over the past year has truly been recognised. Over the years, I have watched bonus season unfold in many different organisations, particularly in hotel environments where operational pressure and commercial accountability run side by side. Some leaders handle these conversations with care and clarity, leaving people feeling respected even when the financial outcome is modest. Others approach the moment more mechanically, delivering the number quickly and moving on to the next meeting. The contrast between these approaches can be striking. What is most interesting is that the difference rarely lies in the size of the bonus itself. The difference lies in how the conversation is handled. In hospitality, this distinction matters more than many organisations realise. Hotel operations depend heavily on the discretionary effort of leaders and teams who manage unpredictable demand, high guest expectations, and complex staffing challenges. When leaders and managers feel that their effort has been recognised fairly, the effect can be energising. When the process appears rushed or opaque, the opposite can occur. Even capable leaders may begin to question whether the organisation truly understands the demands of their role. For that reason, the bonus conversation should never be treated simply as an administrative task. It is a leadership moment that reveals far more about organisational culture than many companies appreciate. Why bonus conversations carry more meaning than organisations expect. Organisations, understandably, approach bonus calculations with a strong focus on financial discipline. The process must be consistent and defensible. Performance must be measured carefully. In many hotel groups, the debate around bonus pools can include detailed analysis of revenue growth, GOP performance, guest satisfaction scores, and operational targets. Yet once the calculation is complete, employees rarely view the outcome through a purely financial lens. In practice, they interpret the result through a much more personal set of questions. They want to understand whether their effort was noticed, whether expectations were applied consistently, and whether leadership truly values the contribution they made during the year. These interpretations are shaped less by the number itself and more by the explanation that accompanies it. A thoughtful conversation that explains how the outcome was reached can leave employees feeling respected, even when the bonus is smaller than expected. A hurried explanation can create frustration, even when the payment itself is reasonable. In my experience working with hospitality leadership teams, people rarely remember the precise amount of their bonus a year later. What they remember is whether the conversation felt honest and whether the reasoning behind the outcome made sense. The legal framework may be technical, but the experience is human. Employment law across different parts of the world treats bonuses very differently. Some systems treat them largely as discretionary rewards, while others place stronger emphasis on contractual entitlement or collective practice. In the United Kingdom, Many bonuses are structured as discretionary payments linked to company performance or individual objectives. Organizations usually retain flexibility over the final outcome, although once a pattern of payment becomes established, employees may begin to see it as a predictable element of their overall earnings. France illustrates a different model. Alongside discretionary bonuses, many organizations operate profit-sharing arrangements known as participation or entrustment. These schemes allow employees to share collectively in company performance and are often negotiated with employee representatives. Italy reflects the strong influence of collective labor frameworks. Many hospitality employees fall under sector-level agreements that establish baseline pay structures and employment conditions. Within that framework, organizations frequently introduce productivity bonuses known as premi di risultato. In the United States, the approach is frequently more formula-driven, particularly within large hospitality groups. Bonuses are often tied closely to measurable outcomes such as revenue performance, guest satisfaction scores, or profitability targets. When those targets are met, the bonus follows automatically, creating a system that can feel transparent but also unforgiving when results fall short. Across parts of Asia, many organizations operate structures that combine fixed annual payments with performance-based bonuses. In several markets, employees commonly receive what is often referred to as a 13th month payment, which is treated as a normal component of annual earnings rather than a discretionary reward. Additional bonuses may then be layered on top, depending on the company's performance and operational results. Across these different systems, the legal structure may vary considerably, yet the employee experience remains remarkably consistent. People want to understand how the outcome was reached and whether the process feels fair. When the explanation is clear and credible, even a modest bonus can be accepted with confidence. When the reasoning is unclear, the opposite can occur. Why hospitality leaders need to approach this moment carefully. The hospitality sector brings its own dynamics to these conversations. Hotel leaders operate in environments where performance is visible every day through occupancy levels, guest feedback, service delivery, and financial results. Department heads and operational managers often carry responsibility for both guest experience and commercial performance. By the time bonus season arrives, they have already navigated a demanding year. They may have managed periods of high occupancy with limited staffing, handled complex guest situations, or balanced commercial targets with the realities of daily operations. In such environments, reward discussions naturally become moments of reflection on that effort. When the conversation acknowledges the realities of the role, it can reinforce a sense of shared purpose. When that context is missing, the outcome can sometimes feel disconnected from the realities of the role. Because of this, the way organizations prepare leaders for bonus conversations is just as important as the formula used to calculate the payments themselves. Where organizations frequently encounter challenges. In many organizations, the same challenges tend to appear year after year. Considerable effort is invested in designing reward frameworks, yet comparatively little attention is given to how the outcome will be communicated. Three patterns appear particularly often. Managers receive the numbers, but not the narrative. HR and finance teams may spend weeks analyzing performance data and calibrating outcomes across departments. When the process reaches line managers, however, the guidance they receive can be limited to a spreadsheet and a brief instruction to communicate the results. Without a clear narrative explaining how decisions were reached, managers may struggle to present the outcome confidently. Recognition becomes secondary to justification. When bonus outcomes fall short of employees' expectations, managers sometimes place heavy emphasis on explaining financial constraints or organizational pressures. What strong leaders do instead? Leaders who handle bonus season well approach the conversation as an opportunity to strengthen trust rather than simply deliver a financial outcome. Three behaviors tend to distinguish those leaders from the rest. In a nutshell, bonus season may begin as a financial process, but for employees, it is experienced as a leadership moment. The size of the payment matters, but the quality of the conversation surrounding it often matters more. Leaders who provide context, recognize contribution, and speak with clarity tend to reinforce trust even when the financial outcome is modest. When the explanation is unclear or hurried, the opposite can occur.
Ramadan at work, leading well before the Rota panic starts. Ramadan is expected to begin on the evening of 17 or 18 February, with 𝗟𝗲𝗱𝗲 predicted for Friday, 20th March, subject to moon sighting. That timing matters because there is still space to lead with thought rather than react under pressure. In hospitality, where shifts are tight, guest expectations are high, and energy levels matter, Ramadan can become a quiet test of leadership. It shows whether inclusion lives only in policies and statements, or whether it shows up in rotas, conversations, and everyday judgment on the floor. This edition of HR Horizons focuses on planning early, supporting people effectively, and keeping teams aligned. It is written for HR professionals and operational leaders who want practical guidance without feeling they need to be experts in someone else's faith. Ramadan is not one experience. Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar and marks the period when the Quran was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. Many Muslims observe the month by fasting from sunrise to sunset, alongside increased prayer, reflection, charity, and community connection. Not all Muslims fast. Some are exempt due to health, pregnancy, menstruation, or travel. Others observe Ramadan in quieter or less visible ways. Even among those who fast, the experience varies. Some people feel focused and steady, while others find energy dips later in the day, particularly when sleep patterns change due to prayer and evening commitments. The first rule of good leadership is not to assume you know who is observing or what that observance looks like. Inclusion often unravels when assumptions replace conversations. Why talking about this now matters. This edition is published before Ramadan begins, and that is deliberate. Early February is when rotas are finalized, training schedules are locked in, and operational expectations are set. Once those decisions are made, flexibility becomes more difficult and pressure increases. Planning ahead allows for calmer conversations and fairer adjustments. It also makes it easier to communicate clearly with teams rather than scrambling at the last minute. In hospitality environments especially, rushed changes are where frustration builds. Early thinking keeps trust intact. The leadership move that makes the difference. The most effective support does not start with a policy. It starts with creating a safe, simple way for colleagues to discuss what they might need without pressure or being put on the spot. That might be a quiet check-in during a one-to-one, a short note from a manager, or a reminder that HR is available for confidential conversations. The aim is not to ask people to declare their faith. It is intended to reduce the emotional effort required to ask for help. Questions that land well tend to be practical and open. Asking whether anything would make work easier during Ramadan, whether certain times of day are better for energy, or whether there are dates toward the end of the month that should be considered, shows respect without being intrusive. What matters most is tone. Listening without judgment builds trust quickly. What good support looks like in practice. Flexibility that actually helps. Fasting affects people differently, so flexibility should be individualized rather than formulaic. In practical terms, this can mean earlier start and finish times, adjusting the timing of physically demanding tasks, or scheduling important meetings earlier in the day when energy is often higher. In hospitality, this usually comes down to sensible rota design and teamwork. Small, temporary changes can protect well-being, safety, and performance simultaneously. Two people in the same role may need very different adjustments, and that is entirely normal. Annual leave and Eid. 𝗟𝗲𝗱𝗲 is confirmed by moon sighting, which means exact dates are often known only shortly beforehand. This can feel uncomfortable in organizations with rigid holiday approval processes. Staying fair does not require being inflexible. Early conversations about likely time off, openness to provisional requests where operations allow, and a willingness to explore partial leave or shift swaps all help. The biggest risk here is rarely operational. It is relational. People remember how their organization responds when something important to them is treated as an inconvenience. Food, meetings, and everyday routines. Ramadan changes how food fits into the workday. That is obvious in theory, but often missed in practice. Meetings that always involve food, training sessions scheduled over mealtimes, or celebrations centered on eating can leave colleagues feeling awkward or excluded, even when no one intends harm. Leaders can reduce this by planning ahead, avoiding making food the center of every activity, and offering respectful alternatives where possible. In hospitality environments, even break rooms matter. Providing a food-free space for rest can be a small adjustment that makes a real difference. Prayer and quiet space. Some colleagues will want time for prayer during the working day, while others will manage around shifts. Some will be comfortable praying quietly. Others may need a more defined space. A sensible approach is to be clear about what space exists, how breaks can be used fairly, and to respond to requests with thoughtfulness rather than suspicion. Consistency and dignity matter far more than perfection. Team dynamics. Where things often go wrong. Many organizations handle individual requests reasonably well, but struggle with the wider team. If some colleagues receive adjustments and others feel they are picking up extra work, resentment can surface quickly, particularly in stretched hospitality operations. This is where leadership communication matters. Adjustments should be framed as part of normal, flexible working, not as special treatment. Expectations on behavior should be clear, and concerns should be addressed early rather than allowed to simmer. There is also a more serious risk. Muslim colleagues can experience inappropriate comments, jokes, judgment about productivity, or pressure to explain themselves during Ramadan. Managers need to understand what religious harassment can look like, including subtle behaviors, and be clear that banter is not an excuse. Silence from leaders is often interpreted as permission, and that is how cultures drift. What managers often worry about saying. Many managers want to be respectful, but fear getting it wrong. If a colleague has been open about observing Ramadan, simple greetings are usually appreciated. Phrases such as Ramadan Mubarak or Ramadan Kareem are widely accepted. If you are unsure, it is better not to guess. Keeping language warm and neutral is often enough. When sending wider messages to teams, focus on awareness, flexibility, and respect rather than assumptions about who is observing. A hospitality lens. In hotels, restaurants, and service environments, support for Ramadan is not theoretical. It shows up in whether rotas feel fair, whether breaks are protected, whether managers respond to energy dips with empathy rather than judgment, and whether teams feel respected rather than stretched thin. This is where hospitality HR adds real value. Helping managers translate good intentions into workable decisions is often the difference between inclusion that looks good on paper and inclusion that actually works.
Global HR. Why confidence matters more than consistency. Whenever organizations operate across more than one country, HR inevitably starts to feel more complex. Recruitment stretches across borders, employees relocate and pay, and benefits stop meaning quite the same thing everywhere. Training has to land across different cultures, languages, and expectations, all while remaining coherent and credible. On paper, global HR often looks like systems, structures, and compliance. In practice, what seems to matter most is confidence. Confidence for leaders in making decisions across jurisdictions. Confidence for employees navigating unfamiliar rules. And confidence that fairness exists even when things look different locally. What follows is simply my own perspective, shaped by years working in hospitality and HR, and offered in the spirit of reflection rather than prescription. The quiet tension at the heart of global HR. Most global organizations wrestle with a familiar question. How much should be set centrally, and how much should be shaped locally? Some lean towards centralization, valuing consistency, risk management, and brand alignment. Others prioritize autonomy, trusting that those closest to the operation understand their people, market, and culture best. Neither position is inherently right or wrong. Both exist for good reasons. Over time, many organizations move between these poles. When fragmentation starts to show, centralization increases. When systems begin to feel heavy or distant, flexibility becomes more appealing again. This movement is rarely a failure of strategy. More often, it reflects growth, scale, and evolving leadership priorities. What matters most is clarity. Confusion tends to arise not from the direction chosen, but from mixed signals. When organizations speak about empowerment, but behave as though decisions still sit elsewhere, confidence begins to wobble. People are remarkably good at sensing these gaps, even when intentions are positive. Why confidence matters more than uniformity. Employees do not expect everything to be the same everywhere. What they do expect is that decisions make sense. They want to understand why policies differ, why benefits are shaped locally, and why opportunities vary by market. When those differences are explained openly and applied consistently within context, people tend to accept them. When they are unclear or inconsistently handled, trust erodes quickly. For leaders, confidence comes from knowing where judgment genuinely sits, which principles are fixed, where discretion is encouraged, and how far decisions can be made locally without fear of being overruled later. This matters particularly in hospitality, where leaders are often navigating real-time, people-centered decisions rather than theoretical scenarios. Uniformity can feel reassuring, especially at scale. Confidence, however, comes from knowing how to navigate difference thoughtfully, not from pretending difference does not exist. Global HR as a connector rather than a controller. One of the most positive shifts I have observed over time is how global HR functions add value when they position themselves as connectors. Connecting leaders across regions who are facing similar challenges, even when their contexts differ. Connecting good ideas so they travel, rather than remaining locked within a single market. Connecting local insight back into global thinking so strategies evolve rather than harden. This does not mean the absence of structure. Clear frameworks, shared principles, and a common language all play an important role. What changes is the intent behind them. When global HR enables understanding and consistency of purpose rather than uniform execution, it becomes a source of reassurance rather than friction. Where this works well, global HR feels close, even at a distance. It supports decision-making rather than slowing it down, and it strengthens confidence rather than creating dependency. The human reality of mobility in global careers. International moves and assignments are often framed as development opportunities, and they can be. They are also deeply human experiences, shaped as much by emotion as by ambition. Success rarely hinges on technical capability alone. Adaptability, emotional intelligence, and resilience matter just as much. So does the experience of partners and families, whose ability to settle often determines whether an assignment flourishes or quietly falters. Training across borders requires humility. Global training offers an enormous opportunity, particularly through digital platforms that allow learning to travel quickly and efficiently. It also brings risk when cultural nuance is overlooked. What feels engaging in one context may feel uncomfortable in another. Participation, challenge, humor, and even silence are interpreted differently across cultures. The aim is not to dilute learning, but to adapt it with care. The most effective global programs I have seen are designed with curiosity rather than certainty. They assume differences rather than treating them as exceptions. They invite dialogue, encourage shared learning, and allow participants to contribute their own perspectives. That approach builds confidence not just in the content itself, but in the organization's intent. People feel respected rather than instructed. Leadership sets the tone. Ultimately, confidence in global HR does not come from documents alone. It comes from behavior. When leaders explain decisions clearly, acknowledge complexity, and show respect for local expertise, people feel steadier. When HR leaders listen as much as they design, confidence grows on both sides. This is particularly important in organizations with strong regional leadership. Global frameworks tend to land best when they are shaped with those who will bring them to life, rather than for them. In those environments, collaboration feels genuine and accountability is shared rather than imposed. Looking ahead, global HR will always involve tension between consistency and flexibility, between pace and care, between global ambition and local reality. In my experience, organizations tend to navigate this best when they focus less on perfect alignment and more on clarity, trust, and capability, where people understand not just what the rules are, but why they exist and how to apply them well. Confidence, it turns out, is the quiet advantage, and it is built one thoughtful, well-judged decision at a time. Takeaways. Confidence in global HR comes from clarity of intent rather than uniformity of approach. Local expertise strengthens global strategy when it is genuinely trusted. Mobility, reward, and training decisions land best when their human impact is fully considered. Global HR adds most value when it connects people and thinking, rather than controlling outcomes. In a nutshell, global HR does not succeed by ironing out differences. It succeeds by helping people navigate those differences with clarity and confidence. When leaders understand the intent behind decisions, when local expertise is respected, and when global frameworks support rather than constrain, HR becomes a steadying force rather than a complicating one.